Did people in New York City riot for the dumbest reason ever in 1922? The internet says it's true. Welcome to The Internet Says It's True, a show where every week we learn something that sounds made up but is really true, part of the WCBE podcast experience. My name's Michael Kent. Welcome back. Let's learn something new. Coming up later in the show, we'll be talking with actor Hal Sparks, so we have that to look forward to here in a bit. For Patreon listeners, you get every episode a week early now, and you can listen ad-free and watch video. So much cool stuff happening over there. I sent a bunch of stickers and photos out in the mail this week to some of those Patreon members. You can join at patreon.com/Michael Kent. I appreciate all of the support there. For everyone else, this episode is coming out on Independence Day, July 4th. So to those of you listening in America, happy 4th of July. If you live in a neighborhood, please be considerate of your neighbors that have pets and/or PTSD before deciding to light off fireworks. Just remember that something like 30% more pets get lost between July 4 and July 6 than any other time of the year. Only 14% of those animals are returned to their owners, so please be aware of that. Also, be careful. Don't do anything stupid as you're celebrating. If you have an interesting fact or a piece of history that sounds made up but it's actually true, please send it in to me. You can do that at theinternetsaysitstrue.com. There's a form right there on the homepage. I would love to have you contribute to the show, just like we had from this caller, Brian.
Hey, Michael. This is Brian. Hey, I got one for you. Have you ever heard about the Straw Hat Riots that happened here in Manhattan?
Well, this is interesting. I knew nothing about this one. I took a look into it, and I'm not sure there's been a civil unrest over a dumber thing. This may be the dumbest thing anyone's ever rioted over, but that, of course, makes it interesting and makes it great for this podcast. You may have heard about the tradition that forbids the wearing of white after Labor Day. It's a social taboo to do so, and it's one of those traditions from the past that has long been removed from its origin. It's an antiquated social rule that nobody adheres to anymore, but the reason for it is status. Before we could brag about our vacations on Instagram and Facebook, the clothes we wore let those around us know what sort of vacations we could afford, if we could afford them at all. People who were of means and wealth could afford to vacation traveling away to warmer climates where it was customary to wear white linen clothing to keep cooler. Then, when they returned back home to the city, those members of the upper echelons of social and economic class felt the need to separate themselves from poorer members of society. In a place like New York City, where there was little or no geographical separation between classes, the way they would separate themselves was by wearing these white clothes. After all, a working class person wouldn't be able to wear white because it would get dirty, so light colors were commonly worn by richer people, dark colors by poorer people. Labor Day was usually seen as the end of summer, so if you wore white after Labor Day, it was signaling to society that you had the money, the means, to take these special fall and winter vacations. So it's an antiquated social rule, and it's basically rooted in classism. There's a similar tradition in other countries with fingernails. Men in Greece, Italy, Portugal, and Turkey have a tradition of wearing one of the nails of their pinky finger much longer than their other nails, and the reason they do this is the understanding that if you worked a manual labor job, you wouldn't be able to wear that fingernail long without it being broken or worn down. It's another tradition rooted in showing your social and economic status. And that's what brings us to straw hats. For men in the late 1800s and early 1900s, the hat was an important part of clothing, particularly in public. Men wore the Homburg-style hat with their semi-casual clothing, which was a popular felt-style hat with a short brim. Anytime you were wearing a jacket or blazer, you would be wearing a Homburg hat. But for summer months, that would often be replaced with a hat called a boater hat. Now, these days, you've probably seen a boater hat associated with political rallies or barbershop quartets. It's the straw hat with the flat top and the short flat brim and a ribbon around the base. This type of hat was the equivalent in formality to the Homburg, but worn in the summer to signify the change in seasons. A less formal version was the Panama hat, which is the larger brim version that Teddy Roosevelt had made popular when he was photographed wearing one while observing the construction of the Panama Canal. These straw hats were only accepted as summer headwear. It's similar to wearing white clothes in that way. Different regions would switch to straw hats on different days, but there would usually be a regionally declared Straw Hat Day when men would switch from their felt hats to straw, usually around May 15th. It was sort of a celebration that summer had arrived. Everyone loved to switch their straw hats. Likewise, when September 15th arrived, that meant that summer was over and it was time to switch back to felt hats. And if you didn't, there was hell to pay. I'll tell you all about that after a quick break.
I'm John DeSando, host of Back Talk. This podcast is an extension of the long-running, award-winning movie review show, It's Movie Time. Back Talk features additional content and banter with guests about new movies. If you want more insight and information about what's playing now in theaters and online, find Back Talk at the WCBE Podcast Experience on WCBE.org. You'll be happy you did.
There was a time that humans used 100% organic products as healing balms and moisturizers for their skin. Well, I've partnered with an awesome company that wants to get back to those times. Fatco sells organic and responsibly made tallow-based skincare products. For centuries, humans used tallow in skin moisturizers and healing balms, but unfortunately, the topical application of these fats seemed to stop around the same time that animal fats stopped being considered part of a healthy diet. A lot of modern skincare products do more harm than good by stripping your skin of its natural oils. Let's change that. You can try them out now at fatco.com and get 15% off your order by using my promo code INTERNET. Go to theinternetsaysitstrue.com/deals for the link. I've been traveling again lately, and that means I've been wearing my Scotty Vest jacket, which is awesome for anyone who sort of lives life on the go like I do. It's been awesome for traveling around because it's got tons of pockets for all my gadgets, my phone, my glasses, my wallet, my charging cord, you name it. It's a clothing company I believe in, and I'm confident they've got an article of clothing that you'll love. The best thing you can do is take a look at all the awesome pocket-packed clothing on their website. To get 15% off your order, visit the link in the show notes. Think about the last time you celebrated St. Patrick's Day. You might have eaten some traditionally Irish food like corned beef and cabbage, drank a green beer, and you may have gotten pinched if you forgot to wear green that day. It's a weird tradition for sure, but where did it come from? Well, according to the New York Irish Censor, wearing green symbolizes Irish republicanism, the group that campaigned for Ireland to become independent in the late 18th century. And the reason we get pinched is because of the folklore that green makes you invisible to leprechauns, and naughty leprechauns apparently like to pinch people. So, if you don't wear green and someone pinches you, they are cosplaying as a leprechaun. That or they're grossly appropriating leprechaun culture. Either way, it's a social clothing rule that is openly enforced and understood with a sort of transgression against the culprit. And that's what happened if a man wore a straw hat after Felt Hat Day. The date to switch back to felt hats was originally September 1st, but had eventually been pushed back a few weeks. In some areas it was September 13, in some areas it was September 20th, but as we talked about earlier, men were supposed to switch from their summer boater hats to warmer felt hats when the seasons got colder. And regardless of the actual weather, this date was September 15th in New York. If a man was seen wearing a straw hat after that date, then his buddies would taunt him, and for some close friends, it was even acceptable to knock the hat off his head and stomp on it, ruining it. This was common practice between stockbrokers on Wall Street. They were friends, and it was a friendly ribbing. Now, at some point, this started moving from being a practice between friends to being a prank that mischievous teenagers would do to complete strangers. So if they saw a man wearing a straw hat past the acceptable date, they'd knock it off his head and smash it before running away. This became so prevalent that newspapers would run warnings to men leading up to September 15th to be sure to switch hats. Of course, many of these warnings were put in the paper by the local hat salesman next to an ad for their finest felt Homburgs. In 1922, September 15 was only 2 days away, and a group of kids decided that they couldn't wait for Felt Hat Day. They were going hat smashing in Mulberry Bend. Mulberry Bend was a rough area of New York. It's now the area known as Chinatown, but in that time, it was part of the city filled with young street gangs like the Dead Rabbits and the Bowery Boys. It was known throughout New York as one of the worst neighborhoods. Upper-class people didn't go there. It was seen as the place where poor immigrants lived with crime, filth, and depravity. On September 13th, a group of teens ran up and down Mulberry Bend, knocking and smashing straw hats off factory workers who were wearing them. After all, they wanted to smash hats, and in 2 days, there'd be a lot less hats to smash. When they smashed the hats of a group of dock workers, The dock workers fought back, turning the whole thing into a huge brawl that is said to have even stopped traffic on the Manhattan Bridge. Police stopped the fight, arrested some people, and everyone else went home. But the next night, the same thing happened. This time, it was worse. This time, the group of hat smashers had grown to over 1,000. Some of them were armed with baseball bats. Some of those baseball bats had nails driven through them protruding from the barrels. The thugs went up and down lower Manhattan, knocking off straw hats, smashing them, and beating up anyone who fought back. Multiple men were hospitalized. Huge groups of teens smashed hats on Amsterdam Avenue and more on 109th. The police once again did very little, but eventually stopped the rioting. Only a few of the boys were jailed, and the longest sentence served was just 3 days. The New York Tribune printed a story about the Straw Hat Riots a few days later. The article says, quote, "Boys who were guided by the calendar rather than the weather, and most of all by their own trouble-making proclivities, indulged in a straw hat smashing orgy throughout the city last night. A dozen or more were arrested, and 7 were spanked ignominiously by their parents in the East 104th Police Station by order of the lieutenant at the desk." Close quote. Hat smashing continued every year until the fashion of wearing the boater hats died out. Some years, hat smashing incidents were worse than others, but 1922 in New York City was the largest scale incident, except for the time in 1924 when a man was actually murdered for wearing a straw hat past the acceptable date. So there you go. The Straw Hat Riots, a ridiculously stupid reason to riot. You know, when Brian sent me this topic, he sent it with a note that says, "This is the most white people-led riot I've ever heard in my life." To which I replied, "It's definitely in the top 2. It's time for the part of the podcast where I call a friend, and today we're talking with the legendary Hal Sparks. You may know Hal from his role as Michael Novotny on Queer as Folk, or from Lab Rats or Spider-Man 2. He's also a political commentator, musician, and comedian. Good to see you again, Hal. How have you been?
I'm spectacular, but I'll get better. You know, there's always room for improvement, even when you're as great as I am, and it's nice to be here.
Well, we
Lovely
were just
orange background that you have here. I appreciate it.
We were just chatting about, today's events, and on the day that we're recording this, which is a week ago for those of you listening to it, is the day that the big Supreme Court Roe v. Wade decision came down, and I'm feeling pretty dejected today. And and I talk to you, and you're hopeful, and I need that today. So I appreciate you.
Yeah,
and I needed to hear
one of the biggest
voice.
One of the biggest reasons, and we'll do it short because we'll get on with the show or whatever. One of the biggest reasons is that sometimes when you have a temporary solution that's been there, you've been patching a hole with a Band-Aid for a long time instead of doing the spackling you need, eventually that's going to break loose. And at a certain point, you have to recognize that that's not going to be able to hold up the pressure that you're using. That patch is not going to hold forever. That duct tape on that pipe is going to come loose. And you can either scream at duct tape, or you can get about replacing the pipe. And I've been screaming about replacing the pipe for a long time. So it's nice to see people finally coming on board with, we need to fix our pipes. You know what I'm saying?
Because the leak is going to continue to happen. I mean, there are still going to be abortions.
No. I mean, not only that, you got people drilling holes in the pipe.
Yeah.
So I would argue that you got one choice in this, between the two, that's going to actually try to fix the pipe, and the rest of them are going to try to pretend there's duct tape that will work, and then tear away strips of it every chance they can get, or in this case, tear it straight off and just let the basement flood. And you got to act like it. You got to start treating women's rights more than like a ping pong ball.
Yeah.
And that, we'll decide next time. We'll punt it. Nah,
Oof.
I'm not doing that.
Oof. Yeah. Well, your enthusiasm and your analogy ability is one of the reasons why I enjoy watching your live stream every weekday. So I brought you on to quiz you about something that you may or may not know about. Now, what part of the country are you originally from?
Kentucky.
You're from Kentucky. And where are you these days?
I'm in Vegas and LA. I split my time between the two.
Vegas and LA.
So basically, I've grown up and been in the same environments my entire life. What's the difference? Downtown Chicago, Las Vegas, Los Angeles, and of course, Peeks Mill, Kentucky. I mean, as the Chinese would say, Chabador. It's the same.
Well, tell me if you know this one. Here's your question. Oh, and by the way, if you get it right, I have to tell a joke. And if you get it wrong, you'll have to tell me a joke.
Okay, sure. All right.
Here's the question. In the year of 1922, there were riots for a really stupid reason. Which one of these was that reason? Was it A, men rioted when ladies started wearing pants and police refused to intervene? B, men wore straw hats out of season instead of switching to felt hats for the fall? Or C, Woodrow Wilson refused to concede to Warren G. Harding and his supporters stormed the Capitol building to hang Vice President Thomas Marshall?
I'm going with ladies in pants.
The answer
is straw hats.
Is straw hats.
It is straw hats, right? Because that was part of the thing about elections. One of the reasons why straw hats were a big thing that you wear at primaries and stuff was that it was an out of season choice for what kind of that was the seasonal choice. You'd always associate it with a primary because that happened earlier in the year.
Yes.
And so in the fall you put on a fedora, but
That's
in the
right.
summer you wore your thatch hat.
Yeah, and it's a lot like the, wearing white after Labor Day thing. People wore the hats because it was seasonal, and that's one of the same reasons they wore white. One of the reasons was because if you were working poor, you couldn't wear white because you would get it dirty. So it was a way to show your wealth, right? I'm wearing white clothes. I have a buddy.
I can't do that now. I mean, and I don't understand people who can wear. I've never understood white jeans my entire life.
No.
What are you talking about? If you can live a Kardashian lifestyle where apparently they float from couch to couch, I don't understand what the fuck that show is. That drives me crazy. It's all just women on couches leaning back, going, "I don't know what she's talking about."
Well, it's because
I
they
don't know
have
what I'm talking about.
other people to do anything that would possibly get them dirty.
The idea that they're like, we're so involved in our children's lives. I'm like, yeah, maybe beating them because I don't know how there aren't stains on all those couches. There's no way you're raising a child that isn't some sort of Stepford wife automaton, semi-boy. If you're, in terms of he's kind of an android because he stays in a corner until we clean up the mess. We couldn't have white furniture in this house. My
No.
God, all my carpet is gray. We have cats and kids in this house. There is no way.
I have
So I never got the white thing. I mean, I've always wanted to be the Great Gatsby, but just I never learned how to tie a cravat, but much less the white slacks thing is right out.
I have a photo of me doing a magic show in the summer wearing white linen. That was my, I don't know. I decided I could do that. I was probably 23. I
It's
decided
probably Don Johnson era stuff.
Totally.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Bring back the Miami Vice linen thing. I tried that for a while. I was like, that's a style I could adapt to.
Yeah.
During the early years of stand-up, where you would wear a suit jacket and a T-shirt, and a wackier T-shirt, the better, that kind of idea. That was like the uniform.
Right.
And there was one point where could you be a slightly cooler version? I mean, look at Eddie Murphy. He's basically wearing Elvis's comeback outfit when he's touring, or Michael Jackson's Thriller jacket. Maybe there's an area where I can gussy up for my shows without overstepping into it being too much of a show. And I was like, I'll wear a white linen jacket. That lasted one show.
One show.
Yeah, one sweaty show. You do one place with tin can hats, and suddenly your armpits are a different shade.
Yeah,
You're
now
people are
it's
going to think
just
I'm nervous, and I'm just cooking.
Yeah, it's just yellow in certain spots. No big deal.
Right.
It's fine.
Yeah.
So the interesting thing about
fear is reasonable in that situation. Okay, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say the interesting thing about the white clothes after Labor Day is that there weren't people to enforce that. It was just sort of a faux pas. But with the straw hat thing, people would take off your hat and smash it. They would punch it out, they'd punch their fist through the straw because you could, because it was straw.
Right.
And that was acceptable. And I compare it to, the pinching someone if they don't wear green on St. Patrick's Day, which I find incredibly annoying and something that can stop immediately.
No. It must continue, and I'll explain why afterwards. But put a pin in that for now.
Well, that's all I had to say. So I want to know what's your feeling on the 4th of July or on the St. Patrick's Day?
The more people become reticent about normal physical contact, the more the only people that make physical contact are the skeevy among us. And so there's a certain amount of people have retracted from physical touching because of the Epsteins, the Cosbys, the Weinsteins, the Matt Lauers of the world. And we're all not touching each other because of that, which is giving the reins of our social interaction to the worst among us. And I think those kind of things that are genuinely innocent, genuinely silly interpersonal contact are actually valuable for personal interaction, just like hugs and that kind of stuff, that if you allow to fade because you're afraid of the worst among us, they effectively win the battle. They get to define what the limits are and what lines exist, and then they get to cross them. And if your fetish is crossing a line, the bigger the line gets and the deeper it gets, the more your fetish gets expressed. Like, you have to do even less just to get that PowerPoint, because it's not about physical contact, it's about control. So if you expand this, like, nobody touches anybody without total consent, and everybody has to do it, and we're all doing this kind of like Victorian dance around each other, you actually acquiesce the social ground to the skeeviest worst people, because suddenly their fetish runs the world. I think Alan Watts once said that Christianity is the highest form of kink because nothing is kinkier than making sex dirty. And that's where you give it away to those folks.
That's
so
a really
I won't do that.
Interesting perspective. I like it. And it reminds me of the whole reason that the right has started in the first place calling Joe Biden Creepy Joe.
Yeah.
Is you see pictures of him being very, I guess the word would be haptic with people, putting his hands on shoulders. And I know a lot of older people like that. It's like a grandpa thing,
I know people who aren't old who do that, who are like, I know people who are trying to make it have a comeback where they elbow touchers, shoulder touchers, lower back and hip touchers, and it isn't sexual. Yeah. And I know people like there's generations of, and I think it's a mix of tragedies that have made this. I think the AIDS trauma freaked people out. The whole, if you sleep with someone, you're sleeping with everyone they've ever slept with, and after going to the past lives pavilion, that could be tens of thousands of people. If you like the movie Defending Your Life, and but the reclamation of interpersonal contact that is non-sexual actually has tremendous value and is very comforting. And the problem is if you take that away, then you sexualize all contact, which is way creepier.
Sure. That's really interesting. And it also makes me think about the way that, when I get photos with people after I do a show, I'm always very careful now to do like double thumbs up or hands in my pockets, because of the fear of what would be perceived from a photograph, if my hands aren't visible. And that is in your explanation.
I'm not going to do that. I will never do that, because that acquiesces to those people.
Interesting.
The only people going, where are his hands, are total fucking creeps.
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
I'm not going to do that. I'm going to put my arms around people. I'm going to hug them or whatever. If they're like, can I get a hug? I'm like, absolutely. I will hug them as a person that is in my family in those cases. I have had untoward human beings make sexual and inappropriate advances on my physical person in lines for photos and that kind of stuff over the course of my career. I've been a road comic since I was 16 years old. I mean, during the Queer as Folk photo shoots, we had some men and their partners in line to get pictures with us who were specifically trying to get their hands down their pants.
Yeah.
Was I assaulted in that moment by today's standard? Yeah. Did I care in that regard? No. And I'll tell you why. Because I'm a dude and I was a teenager at one point, and I was a young man and highly sexualized in a safe space where I thought that kind of behavior was okay. And I was like testing lines and stuff like that. And I've never meant ill to the person I was expressing towards. And unless I'm being groped and I told somebody, hey, knock it off, I'm not going to worry about it. I'm not going to. But the minute I say it, line is drawn. Anything before that, we're human beings interacting, and I'm not going to assume the worst about you that because you reached over to put your hand on my back or around my waist to take a picture, and it accidentally hit my hip bone because I'm taller or shorter than you thought I would be, and we're all just, is it a picture? Is it a picture? I'm not going to go like, Jesus Christ, everyone stand back. Like, I'm not allowing those elements of my personality to define those, because like I said, I think that's way kinkier. I think that's way more gross than an oops, or one person out of 170 people I take a picture with being a cretin.
You have challenged my thinking on this, and
that's
I'm
what
going
I do.
to.
That's all I'm here for. I'm here to make you like people again. That's my goal in the world. People are good. The vast majority of people are decent human beings. Every morning, billions of people wake up trying to make the world better for themselves and their loved ones and strangers they'll never meet. And they vastly outnumber the creeps among us. And I refuse to let the creeps define my behavior.
Love it. Love it. Do you have a joke for me since you got that one wrong?
I do. And let's see. So a Canadian hockey player, a a Russian oil rig worker, and a a gray whale walk into a bar, and the hockey player goes up to the bar and goes, "Hey, got any I'd love a beer and a donut, eh? Just anything you got back there. I don't even need the. I just like to dunk my beer. You know, it's kind of a Tim Hortons thing. We like to do that. Can you do that?" And he sets him up, and he's totally cool. The Russian oil worker just goes, anything that's made from rotten potatoes. If it's vodka, is one thing, but it's not important to me. Something that was just really hit the spot. That really, because it's been a rough day, and yeah. So anyway, thanks very much. And he sets him up with a vodka, and then the whale says.
Oh, so good. So good.
Thanks. It's one of my favorite jokes. And you can fill it in with anybody. The only part that matters is the whale. So that's one of those jokes. It's not hard for people to remember and retell.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Where they can kind of pick any group. There's a Louisville Sluggers fan, and there's a football fan.
All you need is a whale.
Yep, all you need is the whale.
Just remember the
you
whale.
Can fill it in with anything. It's great.
For this next question, Hal, we're playing for a Twitter plug. So if you get it right, I'll plug your daily live stream to my massive 5,400 Twitter followers. If you get it wrong, you've got to plug this podcast to your reasonable following of 126,000. Totally even stakes here.
Yeah, I think so.
Panama hats became popular in the U.S. when Teddy Roosevelt was photographed wearing one while observing construction on the Panama Canal. But straw hats didn't originate in Panama. Which one of these countries invented the hat that became known as the Panama hat? Was it A, the United States, B, Ecuador, or C, China?
Well, we know that what are effectively called coolie hats, the Chinese hats, are indeed made of straw, but that's not the ones we're talking about. The Ecuadorian part of it would seem to be that because of where he was wearing it, but I'm going to go with the States.
The answer is Ecuador. That's
okay.
See how that's too where your instinct is telling you the right answer.
Mm-hmm.
And so basically, the Panama hat is known as the Ecuadorian hat, a toquilla straw hat, or this is fun.
So you're telling me that all during high school, I should have been wearing Ecuadorian Jack clothing?
Yes. I had
disappointed.
I had a Panama Jack shirt that I bought specifically because there's something about, this wasn't high school. This was like maybe 10 years ago. So I was.
Oh, I see. Did you have a members only jacket too that you got at a thrift store?
No, I wish I had one.
Hipster face?
No, see, I can't claim that this was hipster. I didn't get it at a thrift store. I got it at a Panama Jack store.
Sweet.
So I bought it because, sometimes when you're on vacation, you feel like doing really stereotypical vacation-y things. And I was like, I'm going to get a flowery shirt. And I got it, and I wore it once. And next time,
vacation shirt.
I went to wear it on the next vacation, and it was like shredded. I don't know what it just wasn't good quality.
Wasn't of quality? Yeah, no. I'm shocked.
But yeah, Panama hat.
I had a Panama Jack shirt when I was in high school. It was literally a white T-shirt with the Panama Jack logo,
the logo
kind of thing on the front. That's it. Yeah, I've never. I don't wear button downs a lot of times, anyways, because I find, except when I'm doing Nerd Halen, for example, which is obviously integral to the uniform. But most of my clothing choices are what I would call the gray man, which is I should be able to blend in to any surrounding if I choose. I can stand out via my own personality. But if you saw me walking, especially if my hair's not long and it's back or whatever, you're just like, I don't know, average height, average build, white dude, brown hair, brown eyes. I can vanish. I could reacher my way into a crowd anytime I want to. And so, and the other thing is that's the gray man. And then the other part is it has to be tight enough and conforming enough that it doesn't snag on a chain link fence if I'm ever running from a state official. And that's left over from high school. That the idea of having saggy pants in high school or even ripped jeans to some degree, if you're trying to scale a wall when they're like, run for it, that was the lesson I learned in high school was that collars and buttons can get stuck on stuff. Whereas if it's a t-shirt, you either just let it tear or you tear the thing off and book. And and there's left behind.
This is Survival Lessons with Hal Sparks. You're joining Sparky and Mike in the morning.
That's right. Hey, we got Skeeter coming up in a couple of seconds. He's outside of the parking lot. He's trying to round somebody up who's going to hit him in the dick with a tennis racket. And then after that, we got Claire with the morning. She's a sassy lady. She's sassy. She does that sass. She put the lady sass into the weather and the traffic. She's got all that lady sass. Am I not? I mean, that's the roundup, isn't it?
It is.
Like
it is.
My goal is to make Michael cough himself to death with laughter.
This is
every
ridiculous.
So often.
This is the third week in a row that I have had to cough through an episode trying to get rid of whatever this is. And every time I laugh, it makes it so much worse. And I need to quit inviting funny people on the show is the problem.
That's right. That's what I bring in someone that will make you. You know what? Because you know what's the best thing for mucus is tears.
Yeah. Well, join us next week while I have guest molecular geneticist. No, I did have a scientist from like Sweden on one of the very early shows to tell us about how dung beetles use celestial navigation. That's episode 2, I believe.
It's kind of like one of those things where you find out that like cows face north oddly with the magnetic field of the earth. And that
sounds like an episode of the show.
So they like when they're just hanging out.
Yeah.
And they start moving in one direction, they all tilt north or whatever, or south, whatever it is. But they specifically line up in north-south directions because of the
And look at me
magnetic
wearing a watch like a sucker.
Yeah.
I could just be going out to the nearest field.
What time is it?
Let me check my cow.
Right. It's dung o'clock, apparently. I'm late. I'm at the wrong end of the cow. I got to get out of here.
Wow, I'm going to look that sounds like that would be a fantastic future episode. So I'm going to look that up.
Also, the magnetic poles of the Earth may be there's the big story right now is, are the magnetic poles of the Earth reversing? And will it destroy blah blah? I mean, it's done it before, and of course, it didn't destroy anything. As a matter of fact, there's a shit ton of us, and there's a lot more animals after. I don't know what, but anyways. Yeah, that's the big fear is that the magnetic poles of the Earth are going to change. And then everybody in an airplane is going to have to go, ding, ding. Okay, it's fine.
It's like the Y2K all over again. I did do an episode about a guy who thought the Earth was hollow. A guy from here in Ohio.
Oh, Agartha.
Sims.
The Agartha mythology and Admiral Byrd and the holes in I love that shit.
Oh, yeah.
That's one of my favorite ones.
And he thinks that there's people living in there and different animals and different trees. And there was some super deep cave that they just found in Asia. China, yeah, where there were ridiculously tall trees and new species of plant life and everything down in there, and it's super fascinating. That's the first thing I thought of when I read that story. Was like,
once the Antarctica thaws, the dinosaurs are coming back. That's why we have to fight global warming. Basically, so the people that don't know, and if you've seen Stargate, you'll understand this, that human beings decided a long time ago that we can't live with dinosaurs and we can't get rid of them because we didn't have the weapons at the time. So we corralled them all into the holes at the top and the bottom of the Earth, and then we let the Earth cool by limiting our greenhouse gases for a period of time. So it kind of capped them, and they're all trapped in there. And if climate change, I'm making this up as I go along.
It's fantastic.
If climate change melts the polar ice caps, here come the pterodactyls, and that's what Jurassic World is warning us about. So it's kind of a climate story.
Yeah, it's a harbinger. I'm really interested in who herded them. Like maybe in somewhere encoded in the DNA of our dogs, there's a memory of herding dinosaurs.
Very possibly. I think it was. I think that's where the snake charmers and what Pied Piper stories are actually based on the mythology. We figured out some tone that draws them all.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
And that, a long time ago, it was like probably humans pushing a giant piece of bronze that if you kept hitting it, it made this right tone, and then they had to roll it on.
Well, they didn't have wheels, so it would have been.
Oh yeah, well, no, they would put it on logs and keep moving the log in front of it, and then we slowly moved it piece by piece, and the Celtics or whatever, kept moving it north. It was passed off tribe to tribe until they got up there, and then we hit it once really hard and pushed it over the cliff, and then they all chased it into the hole.
And after the dinosaurs got in the hole, giant asteroid hit the Earth, and like shit, we could have used that. That would have done it for us.
Yeah. But all the humans were at the poles, so we didn't get wiped out.
Yes. Man, this is a book. This is the start of a new sci-fi novel. All right.
It's like a moron version of Avatar.
Let's move on. Oh, for that one, you got it wrong. So Twitter plug to your 126,000 followers, but I will
share this.
I'll plug your stuff as well.
I will indeed.
Thank you, sir. Yeah. Question 3. For this question, we're playing for a coveted The Internet Says It's True sticker. They're hard to come by and extremely valuable, and I can legitimately say
now something I actually care about.
This.
You just there you go.
This sticker is the last one because I just mailed out the rest of them to Patreon subscribers and had them sitting at the booth at the Columbus Arts Festival last week. So we did a live episode, which was a lot of fun. So here's the question.
Columbus, Ohio? Is that where you are?
I'm in Columbus.
You in Ohio?
I am.
Oh. I was born in Cincinnati, grew up in Kentucky, but I got a ton of family in Cleveland, so I'm always up there. Sweet. And then my cousin's band used to, he went to school in Columbus, so he started his first band. So they played the Columbus music scene is terrific.
Yeah, it is.
The indie rock scene in Columbus is terrific. It's one of those things where, but for certain money spent and other shit going on, that it could have been the next flourishing spot a couple of times, and it may still at some point, the next indie rock. When the labels are looking, if they ever do again, Columbus is a great place for them to go, hey, there's a niche of good writers. And
absolutely. And we've had a few bands that have made it big out of Columbus recently. So, occasionally it happens and a lot of good places to play music here. It's just, it's one of those hidden big cities. It's a pretty large city that nobody really knows about. So.
But that's sometimes that's the best. It's kind of like the Facts of Life, the show that just never got canceled, just stayed on and on and on. And people are like, is that show still on? And that was enough. You know how many shows get canceled because they have too much attention?
Yeah.
And a bunch of shows that just kind of hum along in the background. People forgot that spot was filled. And so they got a shitty time slot. Nobody expects much. So the show ends up stacking 60 episodes. By the time anybody notices, we should look at the ratings.
This is how I feel about The Simpsons. Every once in a while, there'll be an episode of The Simpsons that someone will find from 20 years ago that was prophetic. And I'm like, it's not that they're prophetic. It's that they have been on the air for so long and they've covered so many topics that they have told every story there is to tell. So when it happens in real life, nothing's new. Yeah. It's of course they told that. They were out of stuff in season 4. They had to start making stuff up.
Big Lebowski, I mean, that one's crucial. But, Bush on television, this Gresham will not stand, writing the date on his check is 9/11.
What? I don't know about this. I'll have to look that up. That's crazy. Maybe that'd be a good episode. Man, you're giving me all kinds of ideas here, but let's move on.
What I do.
Here's your question. The Straw Hat Riots in 1922 were instigated by gangs of teenagers from the rough and tumble Mulberry Bend area of 5 Points in Lower Manhattan. Which one of these other disturbances happened in that same area of New York? Was it A, the Dead Rabbits Riot, B, the Irish Mules Riot, or C, the Daniel Day Riot?
Rabbits sounds most ridiculous. I'm going with rabbits.
You are correct. The Dead Rabbits Riot was a 2-day civil disturbance in New York City. It evolved from it was a street fight between the Dead Rabbits, which was a gang, and the Bowery Boys, which was a different gang. This was 1857. In the Scorsese
first of all, the Dead Rabbits sounds like a Monty Python cover band that does all the sketches as musicals, which I'm 100% behind right now.
Okay,
and I'm trademarking it as I say it.
Okay, now you've got 2 satirical bands.
Yes,
we've got Nerd Halen
the Dead Rabbits
and the Dead Rabbits
and literally do musical versions where they sing Monty Python sketch, the parrot sketch, the rabbit scene from Holy Grail.
Yeah, and they deliver stuff. The songs from Monty Python they deliver as monologue with no music. Yeah. So we're just
that's right. Yeah, they read them straight as poetry.
Yeah, in the Scorsese film Gangs of New York, they do have a fictional riot between the Dead Rabbits and the Bowery Boys by those names, but it's fiction. It's based on this actual 2-day civil disturbance. But
they overlapping history moments to just try and tell a point about the social and moral and personal interactions.
You, sir, have won my last.
Thank God, the
sticker.
Last one. There was pressure on that one. The other 2, I honestly didn't give a shit about. Right. So I was just, I was enjoying the conversation and really not trying that hard. And I was second guessing myself sort of on purpose just for fun. But this one, there was material gain involved and greed took over and I fought the good fight and I feel good about my chances. And I'm glad to have the title. And I look forward to next year when I have to pass the final sticker off to next year's winner.
Yeah,
and
I'm
I
not
promise to
ordering more,
honor the
so
title.
It's going to be next week.
Until that time. Yeah.
For this next question, you've got to give us a book recommendation if you get it wrong. And if you get it right, I'll recommend a book.
Great.
Which one of these is not?
Is it okay if I recommend several books in my answer?
Absolutely.
Sorry.
In the answer, yes. Here's which one of these is not a type of men's hat? These are two of these are men's hats. One of them is not. A, stingy brim. B, the Franklin. C, the Homburg.
I'm going to go with the Franklin. Just because it sounds like a colloquialism as opposed to the actual name.
Yeah. Well, it's not a colloquialism, and it's not a colloquialism because I made it up. So you're right, but for the wrong reasons, so that counts. I will recommend a book for you.
Okay, great.
This is one that's not even it'll be available for pre-order very soon, but it's needed for anyone who is more on the left side of the political spectrum. It was written by a friend of mine, Ken Weber and Daryl Weber. This book is called Branding Democrats, a top-to-bottom reimagining of campaign strategies. And it's sorely needed.
It sounds very exciting.
Yeah, it's sorely needed, and it's all about messaging and why we're losing the messaging battle regularly.
Yeah, well, I will say that the messaging battle has that the Suicide Squad immolation team showed up this week on the right to hand us a bunch of talking points for the fall.
Yes,
unforced error is what I would call it.
I hope it's not too far away because we do have a lot of momentum right now, but it's June.
Oh, but it's going to grow because these trigger laws are going to start going into effect almost immediately, and they're going to roll out over the next 3 months, and it's going to be even worse than the Supreme Court was like, it's not going to be that bad. It's going to be that bad.
This week alone was ridiculous.
I want to recommend a book as well, just because The End of the World is Just the Beginning by Peter Zeihan is just coming out. And some people on my show will know that there's a bunch of people I go to for like demographics and geopolitics and stuff like that. And he's the first person I found that was mentioning stuff that I was talking about having come back from China about their demographics and their economics. Everybody else was like, that sounds crazy to me. And I'm like, I'm telling you, they're collapsing in a way that I don't think people recognize. And there's a lot of ramifications that we're going to have to prepare for. It's not even a choice.
Wow.
And he's done a bunch of stories about the demographics and the fact that their society is aging now faster than Japan and South Korea, which some people know about the story of the aging populations, Japan and South Korea, and they've got way more people. They don't have anywhere near the 1.3 billion people that they've been talking about. It's all horseshit. They've also got more than 20 million COVID deaths. The whole 4,000 story is nonsense. I was there up till, COVID hit, essentially,
really?
Filming. So it's an angle that most people don't recognize. And in the conversation about China's going to eat our lunch, which is what we've been hearing nonstop for ages, it'll just give you a different perspective on that. His stuff, his videos, you can watch his videos too on YouTube if you're so inclined.
And that's The End of the World is Just Beginning by, would you say the name of the author one more time?
Yeah, Peter Zeihan, Zeihan.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah. And it's The End of the World is Just the Beginning.
Just the Beginning. Okay, perfect. I'll check that out. Thank you for the recommendation. You are 2 for 4. You're 2 for 4.
All right. See, I'm a balanced kind of a guy.
Yeah, this fifth question is going to tip the scale one way or the other.
Oh, okay.
And it's for all the marbles. So if you get it wrong, I'm banning you from this podcast. And if you get it right, I'm happy to have you on again
marbles.
sometime. And you get literal marbles. Here is the question. We've talked about clothing. We've talked about trends, fashion trends, faux pas. What is your Hal Sparks most prized piece of clothing?
Well, there can't be a wrong or a right in this particular instance, but there is. I have a Kiss concert T-shirt that I got at a concert that I had to grow into.
Nice.
When I was 10 years old, that I have that still fits to this day, in keeping with the kind of slim, trim, and muscly shirts that I often wear. Because I think as men, we need to constantly be reminded the state of our bodies.
Yeah, that's a total men thing, right? Right. Just
once
men.
you start draping stuff, you're like, I don't know, who gives a shit. Women are tortured by media to keep themselves in line.
Yes.
Men, it has to be self-torture or we'll never keep up. And I would never inflict an unattractive body on a woman. It's just wrong. So I wear tight clothing also to remind myself of this. But this shirt fits kind of like this one now, but I bought it when I was 10 years old. And it's interestingly enough, it was from the Destroyer tour, which I was too young to go to, but it's a Destroyer one. And I don't wear it because it's super thin. And, I've worn it a couple times on stage performing with my band and doing the Ultimate Jam Night at the Whiskey, which I've done. I worn it once there. But I'm afraid to put it on and take it off because if it tears, it's done.
Yeah.
Right? There's no repairing it.
Yeah. Well, that is a correct answer. And so I'd be happy to have you back on the podcast anytime. You can catch Houseparks Mega Worldwide, his daily live stream on YouTube, which is Houseparks channel, or on Twitch, Houseparks. That's is it 6 p.m. every day?
It's, it depends on where you are in the country.
I'm 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m.
Yes, 6 p.m. Eastern time is when you can do it, 3 o'clock Pacific. And then I do a morning show Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays now that's more sort of philosophical and following whatever's trending. And we kind of talk about the talking points themselves to kind of run the anxiety off at the pass.
Sure.
So I do clips in the afternoon where I break down, the lies of the right moment by moment, bit by bit as they do. And then I also have done all of Mike Pillow's movies all the way through. I've gone through them and basically MST 3000 each one of them.
That's awesome.
And I've done 2000 Mules, the Dinesh D'Souza travesty. Oh yeah, the schlockumentary.
Didn't you offer to debate Dinesh recently?
I did. I mean, I do it every time. I'm willing to debate any of the folks that I make fun of on these shows about the very talking points, or I won't even take it on. If we have agreement, I'll just say it.
Yeah.
But if they're bullshitting people, which that's the qualifying point for me addressing people. Otherwise, who cares? People can have a conversation. I don't care. Right? Whatever if you're having a decent conversation with other people about beliefs you genuinely have, that's one thing. But if you're selling a giant lie and you're making money off of it at the same time, then I'm coming for you. And if any of those folks want to take me on about anything that I've said, I'm here. I will stand up for everything I've ever said in this regard. And so, yeah, D'Souza, I put that out there, and he didn't want to have a debate. He wanted to have, quote, a lively discussion, but I had to let him know my 3 main criticisms. By the way, I went through his show sentence by sentence.
Oh, yeah.
There's no way I could break it down into just 3. But I was like, okay, here's my 3. If anytime you want to do this, but we're going to live stream it because you're not going to edit me the way you edited 2000 Mules.
Yeah.
Here's my 3: your premise, your evidence, your conclusion. We can deal with all 3 of those, and that'll cover it. And so far, I haven't heard back.
Well, I'm looking forward to Dinesh not taking you up on that.
Absolutely.
And
but I need more subscribers to do that. So that's the thing. I have to start charting in a higher. You and I both know it's that magic. There's certain magic numbers, 50K, 100,000, that make the difference between people think whether I'm bigger than some of the people that edge ahead, but they're also willing to, I think, play fast and loose with their ethics, and I'm not willing to do that. Yeah. So I've got to earn that place on the field, and I'm cool with doing that, whatever it takes, time-wise. I'm going to do it organically and for real, and that's fine. But I definitely have to do that before any of these people are going to feel the need to, to face me about these things.
I love it. Well, take Hal up on that. If you guys have a claim and it's bullshit. And I'm going to go research whether or not cows face the magnetic directions of the pole.
Right.
Because
here's the thing.
Sounds
I think
dubious.
It's perfect for this show because it very well may be bullshit, but it's fantastic. And there's lots of dumb footage about it.
This is great.
Right? Yeah.
I mean, I got cows 10 minutes down the road. I'm going to go and
you can go down there and film them and go, I'm going to show you a piece of footage. Can you tell from the sky which direction they're facing?
Yes,
right?
absolutely.
Thanks, man.
Thanks
for having me on,
So good
Michael.
to see you, man. Take care.
Yeah.
That is all for this week. Thanks to Brian for the show topic and to Hal Sparks for being my guest. Here's a kid from England.
Thank you for listening to The Internet Says It's True. To listen to episodes ad-free and a week early, support us on Patreon. You can do that at patreon.com/Michael Kent. If you learned something just now that you didn't already know, go to the Apple Podcast app and leave us a review with 5 stars and a few words. That helps us a ton, because that's how the algorithm works. I don't know what an algorithm is, but just do it! See you next week for a brand new episode of The Internet Says It's True!
The Internet Says It's True would like to thank the Patreon subscribers whose monthly contributions help to make the show possible. Sean Brown, Bryce Swanson, Eugene Anderson, Matt McVeigh, Jim Martin, Joanne Martin, and the show's official Emperor Kick Track. The show is written and produced by me, Michael Kent. The theme song is by Finite Music Forge, and additional music this week was from Ease Jammy Jams and the Mini Vandals. All audio clips in this episode are used for education and commentary and used under Fair Use Title 17 U.S.C. Section 107. You can listen to past episodes by searching for The Internet Says It's True wherever you get your podcasts, and you can see bonus content at patreon.com/Michael Kent.